So something major could have just come out of southern Asia, but also the Middle East. Islamabad, the capital of Pakistan, is celebrating what could be the country's biggest diplomatic win in decades. Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif was greeted in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, with Saudi 15 fighter jets, red carpets, and full royal honours, before signing the critical point of this visit, a strategic mutual defence agreement with Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, or MBS. On paper, it means, well, this: any attack on Pakistan is now considered an attack on Saudi Arabia, and vice versa. But here's the particularly important point. This pact comes at a moment when Israel is obviously striking across the Middle East, expanding its operations in Gaza, and India and Pakistan nearly fell into significant nuclear escalation in May. And the Gulf leaders are really starting also to doubt Trump's commitments to security assurances. With all that in mind, in this video, I wanted to break down why this agreement matters more than you might think, what it means for Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, India, but also much further, and why the US and China, most notably of all, are watching very closely. Stay tuned for this interesting one.
This is The Global Gambit.
How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to the channel, where we are diving into the real stories behind global geopolitics, international relations, and in this case, statecraft, or the relations building in the form of partnerships, alliances, and so on. So if that's something you're interested in, I'm not sure how it works, or always curious about these documents that we sign but don't necessarily have much attention on, then, well, do consider dropping your comments below, because I'm very interested to hear what you have to say. So let's get into this. Firstly, what actually happened? Well, this ceremony, largely overlooked because of everything else that's happening around the world, took place at Riyadh's Al Yamar Palace, witnessed by senior Saudi royals, Pakistani officials, and of course the mutual military brass. The Strategic Mutual Defence Agreement has committed both sides to defending one another. Pakistan's Ministry of Foreign Affairs was pretty blunt in their assessment. Any aggression against either country shall be considered an aggression against both. Now that's formal treaty language. Think obviously Article 5 of NATO. And as some have put it, this is a watershed moment for both countries, the region, but also an expansion of how certain countries, middle powers perhaps, are aligning. Because while Pakistan has cooperated militarily with China and once held defense pacts with the United States during the Cold War, it hasn't had any mutual defense pact with anyone in decades. So why now? Well, of course, the timing is critical. Firstly, Israel's regional activities, war, aggression, depending upon who you are. After 2 years of fighting in Gaza and beyond, Israel has escalated, with bombing campaigns on Iran in June, as I covered, and most recently, a frankly super surprising strike inside Doha, Qatar, of which frankly I personally was very critical of. But objectivity being the focus here, Gulf leaders have now openly questioned whether the United States can still guarantee their security, even though there are 40 to 50,000 US troops, including 30 specifically in the US's largest base just outside Doha in Qatar. Then, of course, there is the second point, Pakistan's nuclear standoff and military exchanges with India. In May, which I also covered significantly at the time, the two countries exchanged missile and drone strikes across military bases and over Kashmir, the most serious confrontation in arguably 3 decades. That came just weeks after the militants killed 26 civilians in Kashmir, many people seeing it as a particularly targeted strike on Hindus. A ceasefire was eventually brokered, with Donald Trump himself, unsurprisingly, claiming the credit. But the danger hasn't gone away, and if you haven't yet seen my deeper dives on how close India and Pakistan came to that, including my conversation with an expert, Ankit Panda, then do consider to check those out across the channel. And then, of course, thirdly, this new, as I called it many times, international disorder. Saudi Arabia, for a long time, has been quietly diversifying away from the petrodollar. In 2023, it joined BRICS, and by 2025, Riyadh begun pricing some oil sales directly in Chinese yuan. This has been part of MBS's broader push to ensure Saudi Arabia isn't wholly dependent on Washington anymore. Linking up with Pakistan, the Muslim world's only nuclear power, might be important to add as well, is obviously one way to hedge. And against this backdrop, the Pakistan-Saudi pact looks less like a formality and more like a proper insurance policy. Historically, just to substantiate on why this is a significant development, it isn't the first time these two countries have drawn closer. Saudi Arabia was one of the first to recognize Pakistan after independence in 1947. By 1951, they'd signed a treaty of friendship, something that countries that genuinely do intend to hold improved relations do from time to time. Then, 30 years later, in 1982, they formalized Pakistani troop deployments and military training programs in and across Saudi Arabia. Since the 1960s, Pakistan has actually trained over 8,000 Saudi military personnel. Pakistani forces have also guided holy sites, trained pilots, and also manned Saudi air defense systems directly. Pakistani's regional diplomacy is also shifting. After decades of estrangement, Islamabad has recently restored ties with Bangladesh, re-establishing full diplomatic contact and modest trade channels. That reconciliation signals Pakistan's desire to re-anchor itself in the broader Muslim world, not merely relying on China or perhaps even Western patrons. I actually covered the regional reset in another video on Pakistan and Bangladesh shifting relations and the impact it would have on India. So do consider viewing that if that's of interest. So this new pact with Riyadh, therefore, isn't just appearing from nowhere. It's the formalization and, you could say, elevation of relations that stretch across both history and, more perhaps crucially in certain times, religion. So what does this really mean? Well, on the surface, the deal pledges mutual defense, but some are already debating its real scope. Some argue that it will consolidate cooperation already underway, more formalize it in that way. More joint exercises, for example, expanded Pakistani troop deployments, and perhaps even joint defense production. There is also the suggestion that it could serve as a model for similar pacts with Saudi Arabia's very close ally, the Emiratis, or perhaps even Qatar, which, given what I mentioned earlier, could be very timely. However, others who observe this area and I spoke to are more cautious. Some say that the US will see this very differently. And remember, between 2021 and 2025, the Biden administration sanctioned Pakistan 7 times over missile development. Indeed, Washington more broadly, not just between different administrations, has long worried about how far Pakistan's nuclear-capable missiles can reach and who might benefit. Whilst America has been on the side of Pakistan at certain times, right now it's more akin to be closer to New Delhi for the geo-economic interests that the Trump administration has through trade and tariffs. Pakistan already has a credibility problem in Washington, and this agreement won't reduce it. Indeed, it will probably get under the skin of those who see the United States as being the overall architect of security, especially with the Saudi Arabians. Then, of course, as I mentioned throughout this or alluded to, India is watching very closely. In recent years, India has deepened ties with Riyadh. Modi has made over 3 visits in a decade. But now, Saudi Arabia has signed a defense pact with India's arch nemesis, nuclear rival. Indeed, the Foreign Ministry of India said it would, quote, study the implications, but some already see this as a shift. Some argue that Pakistan's position has improved, no longer just a recipient of Saudi bailouts, but a formal partner in regional security, and giving it less of a pariah status that some people have thought of it in recent years. At precisely the moment when Pakistan is faced with the threat of heightened military escalation with India, it has secured a strong collective defense agreement from the arguable regional power in the Middle East. And then, of course, there is another angle here too, China. There's always China involved in these sorts of things. Now, Beijing, as you may know if you watch the channel regularly, has had a long-standing relationship with Pakistan, being their most reliable strategic partner, providing over 80% of their weapons and also financial and diplomatic cover. Simultaneously, though, it has been cultivating stronger ties in the Middle East, but specifically with Saudi Arabia. It brokered the Saudi-Iranian reconciliation in 2023, one of the very first things I covered on the channel, if you want to go back to the yesteryear of just how bad my coverage and quality of recording was back then. But it's expanded yuan-based oil sales and invested heavily in the Gulf through the BRI. For China, therefore, this pact is actually a quiet win. It tightens the bond with Pakistan, brings Riyadh one step further from sole dependence on Washington, and complicates India's efforts to position itself as Saudi Arabia's main Southern Asian partner. If you want a bigger picture on that, then you can see a video I did on Beijing's Gulf strategy and how it pairs with this one quite nicely. Now, one question I had when I first saw this, and some of you may be thinking, is does this give Saudi Arabia a nuclear shield? Or could there potentially be development of nuclear weapons in Saudi Arabia with the help of Pakistan because of the loss of belief in America's security assurances? Well, Riyadh has long flirted with nuclear energy, but rumours persist about its intentions, and some argue that you don't need uranium to make a bomb, you can just buy one from Pakistan discountedly. Officially, obviously, nothing in this pact suggests anything like that. Nuclear guarantees or potential nuclear development. And there's no evidence of anything like a nuclear umbrella yet, but this perception alone could be destabilizing for Iran, for Israel, for the wider region, which is obviously reeling from the continued events of the past 2.5 years, well, and perhaps arguably decades. Now, the risks and consequences of this should be clear. Every alliance carries potential risks as it does opportunity. For Pakistan, its risks entangle in Saudi Arabia's regional rivalries, particularly with Iran, where there are border concerns over Balochistan, and possibly even with Afghanistan's Taliban. For Saudi Arabia, it means committing to Pakistan's disputes with India potentially, and, well, one of the most volatile rivalries in the world. And then, of course, the United States. It raises incredibly awkward questions. How much longer can Washington expect to be the Gulf's primary security provider when regional states are signing pacts like this, and also considering trading oil outside of the dollar system? Also for China, it's a chance to quietly expand its influence without really doing anything, as we're the one power that maintains close ties to both of these, and, well, being able to even more undermine America's reliability, something that I've also covered given the, well, SEO Shanghai Cooperation Organization events recently. So do be sure to check those out if you want. All in all, let's be clear. This pact doesn't mean Pakistan will immediately be fighting Saudi wars, or that Riyadh now has a nuclear umbrella and will be jumping into the skirmishes over Kashmir, for example. But it does mark, I think, a turning point. Both nations are signaling they no longer want to rely solely on the US, and they're willing to take steps to formalize and securitize or protect their own interests and representation across the world in a way that we wouldn't have seen a few years ago. The idea that the existing world order led by the United States is, well, again, being shifted. It's a huge development and one that could redraw security politics from Delhi to Doha. But what do you think? Does this deal make Pakistan more secure or just drag it deeper into the Gulf concerns? Let me know in the comments below. If you don't know me, my name is Pyotr Kurzin. I am a British Russian who has influences from both parts of the world, but I've been trained in strategic studies and economic statecraft and international relations from the University Johns Hopkins SAIS. And this channel exists thanks to your support, where I try to, well, engage people from across the political spectrum, and even if they're uncomfortable, understand why people have the different opinions that they do, be them diplomats, analysts, economists, activists, or anyone else. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one. Take care.